Hello, Facebook. This is Brittany Boles taking a sip of water. And hey, Instagram. I am live with chapter 5 of my book, Finding Starlight. This chapter, last week I know that I mentioned I would be reading a chapter called Dad the Troll, but that's actually chapter 6. So before I get started with tonight's chapter, which is actually called Angels and Vampires, I do want to give a bit more of a trigger warning than I typically do. Tonight's chapter is about childhood trauma. So please be aware of your triggers around anything like that. And also, I want to emphasize that I am sharing my story and what happened to me in hopes that it inspires people to go on a similar healing journey. I am also a healer and an intuitive, and I am here for you on your journey. And so if this brings anything up for you, healed or unhealed, that you feel that you want to talk about or share with me, either publicly or privately, please reach out. Whatever happened to you was not your fault. And it's important that we recognize that and that we hold space for each other in this healing journey. So again, this chapter is going to be harder than some of the chapters I've read in the past. And if it brings anything up for you that you need or want to talk about, either with myself or in the comments publicly, please do reach out. Please do share your story if you're at that place. Otherwise, just know that I'm here for you in whatever way. That being said, this is the story of my life as told through a past life regression session, the way that I remember it. This is Finding Starlight by me, Brittany Boles. It is not published yet, but hopefully soon. This is chapter 5, Angels and Vampires. Like a melting scoop of ice cream, the miniature cloud pooled into itself and smoothed, turned silver white to look like a flat, liquid moon. When I focused on it, colors appeared, swirled and settled into place, creating a richly saturated image on its surface, where it still floated in midair between us. It was like viewing a movie on a mini moon. Bizarre. It looks too real, I said to Katrina, like a dream, or another world almost. Like everything is way more alive and full of color than it should be. I believe you asked to be shown what you were meant to see, rather than what you saw before, she replied. Our view was from above the ocean once again. On the sandy beach, I saw myself as a little girl, swinging alone on a playground. My hair was white blonde and messy. My clothes were rumpled, but I was smiling. Swinging high, I pumped my legs in time with the waves. The sun was setting. A great, glowing golden ball sank into a glistening, silky blue sea. Whoosh! A wave washed up like it was chasing my swing. Sigh. The water sighed like a rain stick. My body was nearly upside down. I was swinging so high, feet pointed toward the sky, head all the way back. As I swung, I sang songs from my favorite movies, filling in the parts I didn't know with la la la. No one was around to hear me, but I wouldn't have cared if they were. I loved to sing. I was swinging in rhythm with the waves, my flowy dress ribboned behind me in the breeze, and with the movement of the swing. I was utterly beautiful. With a gigantic smile, I tossed my head back between my shoulders and extended my legs directly into the sunset, letting go of the chains at the very peak of the arch to fly off of the swing. Impossibly, my little body rose into the sky, chasing the sun. The air carried me like a bird on the breeze, over the water and into the colors of the sunset. I cast a bewildered look in Katrina's direction, but she was absorbed in watching the cloud. When I looked back at it, the scene had already changed. An old wooden A-frame sat on the edge of the desert. It was the sort of place that crouched as we approached it. Shadows cast by the hills gave the house the appearance of a face with heavy, lowered eyebrows. Inside was a big bed under a sloped, wood-paneled ceiling. The sheets and blankets were black, like the aura of their owner. A man with greasy brown hair and stubble on his face. Next to him, in a flimsy black shirt, my mother slept. On the edge of the bed with my back to them both, I twitched with restless anxiety. He woke me with his hands on my shoulders early in the morning. We were alone in bed. His body was surrounded by shadowy black and brown, a strangely colorless aura. I shrank away from his touch, eyes wide and scared. I was glowing with warm, soft light. He moved to hover over me, his shadow creating a stark contrast between us. He opened his mouth and sharply inhaled some of my light, like a vapor. It seemed to fuel his desire, and his eyes gleamed with lust. He changed positions then, lying on his side to face me. I noticed he was naked, hard and wanting. He placed my hands roughly on his erection and squeezed them as if to force me to stay. Satisfied that I would, he moved his hands all over my body. I was terrified, frozen in place with fear. Where we touched, I could see from my new vantage point, safely sitting in a forest far, far away from this memory. Some of my light clung to him. It attached momentarily, like a drop of sunlight, to the points at which our bodies met, and then faded into shadow, like liquid spilled on fabric. He finished and left me alone, none the darker for his abuses. Instead, it seemed that the places he had touched me were spilling over with light, like fresh wounds, bleeding out his poison. Hot, silent tears streamed down my cheeks. Outside, the sky turned pink with the canyon sunrise. Following the horizon over the hills, the cloud took us to view a new scene. It was a nice home, light blue with white trim on its many windows. The backyard was generous, a manicured lawn. My aunt's house, I explained to Katrina in a whisper. I didn't want to disturb the cloud. We stayed there for a while. She's married to a minister, and they travel around the South Pacific as missionaries when they aren't at their home in Laguna. The cloud was unbothered. An image of my mom's half-sister appeared. With thick, wavy golden hair and impossibly light blue eyes, she looked the opposite of my mother in every way. The scene changed to show a group of barefoot children walking down the street. Our feet were sandy. Even though the sun was shining, rain fell gently from the sky and clung to my eyelashes. I splashed in puddles, delighted and carefree. I remember that day, I said to Katrina, a sun shower. My cousins and I had so much fun. We had just gone to the beach, a few blocks from the house, and we were walking back under a rainbow. The cloud then turned our attention to a Christmas scene. White lights twinkled in a tree near the window. I was on a couch, snuggled with my aunt, drinking mulled cider. Gigantic, white feathered wings, like those of an angel, extended from her back. They were thickly feathered, soft and towering over us, twice as high as she was tall. I've never seen those before, I thought, but I'm not surprised. The angel and I spoke softly to each other, alone in the room, until my mother appeared in the doorway. Instinctively, my aunt's wings twitched to form a translucent, protective barrier between my mother and me. "Shelley," greeted my aunt with a voice like a harp. "We are talking about your new boyfriend." "Shonda," my mom replied in the overly loud way she did after a few drinks. "That's not surprising. My social life is a hot topic around here." Ignoring my mom's suggestive look, Aunt Shonda addressed me. "Brittany," she rolled through all 3 syllables in my name with a musical tone reminiscent of sleigh bells. "What do you think of him?" I shuddered. Her wings curled more protectively around my shoulders, giving me the courage to speak. "I don't like him," I said. Mom rolled her eyes and sat down, drinking deeply from her glass. "Why not?" the angel aunt asked, like she already knew. "Has he ever done anything to make you not like him?" I looked from my aunt to my mom, unsure. Mom waved her hands in the annoyed, "get on with it" gesture, while her sister smiled encouragingly at me. I told them what had happened in the shadowy house. I lifted my chin and related the story with confidence and indignation, feeling brave. I spoke mostly to my aunt and sometimes to the Christmas tree or to the floor, but never to my mother. When I was finished, Mom dissolved into tears and wailed things like, "What a terrible mother! How could I have let this happen to my own daughter?" And, "What a fucking vampire! I'll kill him!" I kept my eyes on my aunt, who watched her sister with a mixture of sadness and compassion. Her wings settled more tightly onto me, shining brighter until they obscured me from view entirely. The cloud changed once more to a nighttime scene. Our car crunched up a gravel driveway toward the dark, familiar wooden house. He stood in the doorway, watching us walk. Her in front, me being dragged, jerky and unwilling, behind. My mom screamed and tore at her lover. She scratched his face and pounded his chest with her fists, spitting and swearing, unhinged. He took vicious hold of her hair and kissed her, extinguishing her assault. Without looking back, my mother reached out and led me by the hand into the house. I was sent straight up to bed, alone, thankfully. Laying on the very edge, I stared into my hands, breathing deeply. As I did, golden light formed. An orb grew, like the afternoon sun, to surround my entire body in a bubble of light. Calm and safe, I fell asleep. The next morning, I lay motionless, still wrapped inside my ball of golden light. It had intensified to compete with the early morning sun. My mom's boyfriend was there, watching me. He began to touch me, but I did not move. My hands were limp around his hardness. Frustrated, he pleasured himself while fondling my hair. This time, his aura stayed dark and mine bright. Downstairs, my mother cooked a pile of pancakes. Alcoholics, I said, to break the tension. If there's one thing they're good at, it's making breakfast. Nothing like pancakes and bacon to cure a hangover. It was an odd comment to make, considering what we had just witnessed, and saying it felt foreign, like my mouth was moving without my consent. The cloud was still and clear, frozen like an icy lake on a winter day, and reflected in Katrina's wide-open eyes. I kept talking. She made the only pancakes I ever liked, always golden brown on the outside, nice and thin, and never too big or doughy like the ones you get at a diner. She also drank a ton of coffee in the morning. She'd make a whole pot and let me have some, just the way she liked it, with a lot of milk and sugar. Some people told me it would stunt my growth, but here I am, all of 5 feet and 3 inches tall. Guess I showed them. Katrina let my jabbering run itself out without changing her expression. Finally, her silence affected me. I, too, became quiet and gazed at the icy cloud. The horror sank in. My own mother knowingly subjected me to sexual abuse at the hands of her lover. I felt numb, like I had spent too much time in the frozen lake cloud. If I let the coldness take over, I believed I would suffocate. I had to say something, anything. But everything I could think of to say, to deflect the situation, to pass over the pain, was stuck behind tightly closed lips. I physically could not speak. Say something real. I heard or felt the words inside my head. Only the truth may be spoken now. I tried to fight against whatever it was, angry at the frozen firmness in which I was held, but it affected me, leaving me with a hollow cavern that begged to be filled with words I needed to speak. Finally, I found my voice. She betrayed me. I told her what he did to me. I told her, believing she would protect me. I let myself believe that she would choose me over him. She never chose me. I knew better. But my aunt, she was so naive. She convinced me to tell, and I did. I told them everything, despite my shame. I told them how he would make me touch him every single morning and how scared I was. I told them how he touched me. And my mom that night at Aunt Shonda's house, she promised me she wouldn't let it happen again. She said how sorry she was and that she believed me and that she would keep me safe. I was so stupid to believe her. As the words flooded out, warmth returned. I could breathe again. My body relaxed, and I realized that I had been clenching my fists. I massaged my hands and noticed that the cloud was less rigid. Katrina's eyes were softer. We have low battery. Pause for just a second. Katrina's eyes were softer. None of this was your fault, she said, as she would another 1,000 times. Your mother did betray you, but she was already betraying you even before you told her. A mother who abandons her child has abandoned the very thing that makes her a mother. And I knew that, I said, hot now with anger. I knew how she was. She never cared what I said, what I wanted. She didn't care what happened to me, not about anything, ever. I think I'm madder at myself for putting my faith in her than I am at her for breaking it. Brittany, you were a child. You were what, 5 or 6 years old when this happened? She guessed. I don't know. Amber was born when I was 4.5. I do have one memory of Amber as a baby there. I was making us chocolate milk and I didn't realize the milk had gone sour and until I took a huge sip. Gross. Timelines are so hard, I thought, frustrated. Let's just call it 4 to 6 years old, I filled in. How can you even begin to blame a little girl for trusting her mother to keep her safe? She asked, trying to be calm and reasonable, but unable to hide the twinge of anger in her own voice. Well, I wouldn't blame a little girl, I said, but I've never been a little girl, if you know what I mean. I knew better. I was already looking out for her at that point. Katrina took a steadying breath and leaned forward on her mushroom to get a better look at me. It was a stern but loving look. She said, with a pause between each word, "You were a little girl." Okay, so I was a little girl, I conceded. What does that have to do with anything other than to emphasize the awfulness of the whole situation? It has everything to do with the situation, she said. Your innocence and purity were precisely what that man wanted to take from you. Do you remember what your mom called him that night at your aunt's house when you told her your story? A vampire, I said. Exactly. And why do you think the cloud wanted us to see and hear that particular moment? I thought about it, remembering the way the light stuck to him and the way he bent my mom's head back when she was angry and how she submitted to him. Maybe it sort of explains why she was so powerless, I mused. Maybe he drained her so much that she couldn't help me. And in all the stories, vampires' power enchants their victims to the point of total dependency, like a drug. I mean, don't get me wrong, I think there were probably actual drugs involved too. But my mom did seem helplessly drawn to him and weirdly unconcerned about collateral damage, like she had tunnel vision, like she was under his spell, under his control. Katrina was nodding, seemingly pleased with his perspective. Out loud, she said, "That is certainly one way to see it. A different way than you've seen it before. It may well explain, not excuse, but explain some of your mother's actions. Do you remember how or when this ended?" "No, not really," I said. "I guess he just sort of faded out of our lives." "Interesting," she said, "because the last thing I remember seeing was you, totally protected from his advances, and him giving up." "That is interesting," I said. And that concludes Chapter 5, Angels and Vampires, of Finding Starlight, by me, Brittany Boles. Again, I recognize that that was some sensitive material, and I just want you to know that if you ever went through anything like that, I'm sorry. It wasn't your fault, and I'm here for you. Thank you for watching. and listening. I'll go live with chapter 6, Dad the Troll, next Wednesday, which is the night before Thanksgiving. You can catch up on these videos on my website, brittanyboles.com, or on Facebook or YouTube, and leave any comments, questions, concerns here in the comments, or again, you're welcome to direct message me if you have anything to say that you want to keep private. Thank you so much. I love you all for watching and for allowing me to share my story with you. Until next time.